In early March of 1945, I got a telegram from my brother Charlie. It arrived at my apartment in Los Angeles, a slip of paper light enough to blow away on a breath. It was going to unravel my life. It was a Tuesday night. At the movie studio where I worked, we'd finally wrapped our shoot for the day. Paragon Films wasn't one of the big 8 studios, as they called themselves, but it was no coincidence that our little operation had a name almost identical to one of the great powerhouses that would keep making movies well into the next century. Our exec, Jonah Eberly, was convinced we could hit the big leagues if we poured in enough sweat. Every shoot we did left the actors and crew as wrung out as old handkerchiefs. This particular Tuesday, we finished our work close to midnight. The clickety-whirring cameras fell silent, and Sarah Fontaine, our new leading lady, brushed her co-star aside to come and find me in the wings. "I'd like to ride home with you, Nick." Her co-star was another square-jawed Clark Gable would-be, one of the many in those days who got their feet in any Hollywood doors they could find and kept them there, good and hard. A few weeks ago, Sarah had decided to ignore his handsome mug in favor of mine, which was nothing special. Her choice mystified us all. I was never in front of the camera, not for an instant, but those 14-hour days still left me whipped by the time I packed up my sketchbook and pencils. I might not be much company, I apologized. The pinprick headache I got every day prodded me between the eyes, so I took off my glasses to pinch the bridge of my nose. I figured I'd grab a peanut butter sandwich and go to bed. Sarah stood in front of my chair, slim and vivid, in the white nurse's outfit she'd worn for the sequence. Her cap gleamed against her dark hair. "Please let me come over just for a while." Her eyes were the exact color of new leaves in spring. "I never get to see you." We saw each other every day on set, of course, but that didn't count because she was the next big thing, while my sketchbook and I were strictly behind the scenes. Sarah wanted more. She had set about claiming me with the same straightforward focus she brought to owning the roles she played. We got on the tram together. It was a shuddery ride along the fringe of Hollywood back to my place. The warm, early spring darkness smelled and tasted of summer. I had loved California's citrus sweetness since the moment I'd landed there 3 years earlier, fresh off the train from Pennsylvania. I still lived in the same apartment I'd found back then. The Edwardian-style brick building and the nondescript side street it stood on could have come straight out of anywhere USA. Paragon paid me more than decently for what I did for them. I'll tell you more about that later, and by 1945, I could have afforded something better. A place in Tinseltown proper, for instance, in one of those candy-colored buildings with walls of windows and a courtyard spiked with palm trees. I lived alone, though, and didn't much care what the surroundings looked like. At my building, Sarah and I stopped in the lobby for my mail, which I stuffed in the breast pocket of my seersucker jacket. The elevator took us up to the top floor. Sarah kicked off her high heels by my door and hung her long coat on the tall iron rack. The apartment was a single room, small but bright, with a high counter that divided the narrow galley kitchen from the rest of the living space. Prints of art by some of my favorite painters hung on the walls: Peter Paul Rubens, Thomas Hart Benton, Georgia O'Keeffe. Those prints were my only nod to what I'd once hoped to be. Sarah didn't know that. In fact, no one from the studio knew they were a piece of myself that I hadn't quite managed to leave behind, the way I'd tried to leave behind everything else from my life back in the East. Sarah went to the icebox for a rummage. The lid clanked when she pulled it back. "Nick, you must be the only person in LA who doesn't stock booze." "I'm sorry. I'm teasing." She found a bottle of ginger ale and came back to stand close to me. Drops of water gleamed on the glass and on her fingertips. "Sobriety is part of your charm." Back in December, when Jonah had brought her on, he'd said she was going to put Paragon on the map. It wasn't the first time we'd heard such a thing, and she wasn't a Hedy Lamarr or a Greta Garbo, but her eyes surely had a way of catching you. Their color and the slant of her lashes made you want to glance at them again, and that was when you noticed the way her hair curled against the line of her neck, and the way her lips hinted at a smile, and you were caught in her spell as quick as that. She barely needed my behind-the-scenes sketchbook. I said, "Charm, is it? I'm glad to hear I've got some." "You know you do." She took a sip of ginger ale and tilted her head back to look full into my face. "A gentleman in the movie business, no less, who'd rather listen than talk. That's what I first noticed about you." Her free hand reached up to take hold of my lapel. I said to myself, he's quiet, but still waters run deep. I'm going to find out about him. On the wall behind her, lamplight slanted across the O'Keeffe print of blue morning glories. The edges of the flowers stood out, brilliantly cobalt. I took a step back. Sarah's fingers loosened on my jacket. What is it? The mail in my pocket gave me as good an excuse as any. I'm sorry. I reached for the envelopes. I almost forgot about these. I dropped them on the kitchen counter. The telegram lay on top, thin and eggshell-colored, with my address typed in bold black ink. Sarah saw it, too. What's that? During the war years, those tiny slips of paper meant a lurch in the chest, a spike of hope, and a cymbal crash of terror. They were the closest link we had to real-time news from the battlegrounds in Europe and the Pacific. They could be lifelines connecting a wife to her husband in a field hospital in England, or parents to a son in a camp in the Philippines. He's still alive. Maybe we'll make it through. Or they could be what everyone dreaded, that final news, a shadow dark enough to choke out light for good. I had no one sending me word from overseas. Even so, I didn't want to reach out for that telegram on the counter. I had a good idea what it was about, and I wished I could switch off the light and crawl away to hide. My hands trembled as I ripped the envelope open. The single line of text jumped out at me like a shout. Nikki, we need you home. Please come soonest. Love, C. No stops in it, as if the sender had to force the words out in one gasp. Fog seemed to curl out of the corners of the apartment and close in around me. Nick, Sarah said, what's wrong? Still waters run deep. I didn't want her or anyone else to find out about me, but I had known this was coming. The life I'd left behind 3 years ago was reaching out to claim me back. It's from my brother, Charlie. My voice sounded steadier than I'd hoped. Our mom isn't doing well. I need to go see her. Sarah took the telegram and read the line of type at a glance. Is your mom sick? My contact with my mother and brother had been thin enough on the ground, but I knew about the cough that she'd insisted for months was only a stubborn summer cold. And I knew our family doctor had finally cajoled her back in January into tests that turned up masses in her lungs. She hadn't told me about that herself. I knew it from Charlie, who'd written that she hadn't wanted to try surgery or any of the ugly chemicals, as she called them, that might have done something to help. Anyone who knew her would have expected nothing else. Now my brother, 16 years old, was trying to keep things going for himself and her both, with as much help as neighbor ladies could give. He couldn't do it much longer. I sketched all of that out for Sarah as briefly as I could. Oh, Nick. She set her unfinished ginger ale on the kitchen counter and reached for my hand. Her fingers were chilly from the glass. Could she still get better? No. I knew it, but I couldn't say it or look it in the face. I have to go see what's going on. Then Charlie and I'll figure out what to do. If she couldn't get better, I would be the only family my brother had left. Okay. Sarah squeezed my hand and let it go. I won't stay now. You rest and do what you need to. She refused my offer to see her back to her place. A gentleman, like I said. She smiled and slipped her heels back on. Your brother calls you Nikki? They had called me that all my life back home. I'd shed the old name when I'd tried to start over. That's right. I think it's sweet. She leaned in to kiss me. Good night.